In this documentary, we uncover the secret and dark history of Cold War espionage beneath divided Berlin. Journey through the hidden archives of the CIA to reveal the truth behind one of the most dangerous intelligence operations of the Cold War. The city of Berlin was no longer just a city. After World War II, it became a battlefield without open war. A divided capital where every street, every apartment, every telephone line, could hide a spy. In the shadows of East Berlin, Soviet intelligence tightened its grip across the Eastern Bloc. The KGB controlled communications, military logistics, and classified operations from behind concrete walls and barbed wire. But in the early 1950s, American intelligence discovered something alarming. Nearly every major Soviet military communication in East Germany flowed through underground telephone cables beneath East Berlin. And the CIA wanted access. Not through satellites. Not through code breaking. But through a tunnel. A secret tunnel beneath enemy territory. One that would become one of the boldest espionage operations of the Cold War. Welcome back to Currents of History. Tonight, we open a secret archive from the Cold War. This is the dark history of the CIA tunnel beneath East Berlin. And the covert operation that nearly changed the balance of global intelligence forever. The operation began in absolute secrecy. In 1953, the CIA partnered with British intelligence from MI6 to launch a classified project later known as Operation Gold. The objective was simple in theory, but nearly impossible in execution. Build a tunnel from the American sector of West Berlin into Soviet-controlled East Berlin. Without anyone noticing. The tunnel would intercept Soviet military communication cables buried underground. Every conversation. Every command. Every classified message. Captured in silence. At the time, Berlin was the perfect espionage battlefield. The city itself was divided into sectors controlled by the United States, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. Checkpoint crossings were heavily monitored. Double agents moved through crowded train stations. Secret police watched civilians day and night. Trust no longer existed in Berlin. And beneath the surface, another invisible war had already begun. The CIA selected a seemingly ordinary warehouse in West Berlin as the entrance point for the operation. Officially, it was nothing more than a radar maintenance facility. But hidden beneath the concrete floor, American engineers began digging. Carefully. Quietly. Every sound mattered. Because only meters away stood Soviet patrol routes. The tunnel itself would eventually stretch more than 450 meters underground. Ventilation systems were installed to prevent suffocation. Water pumps removed flooding from the unstable soil. Special acoustic insulation reduced vibration during excavation. Workers signed lifetime secrecy agreements. Some believed failure would trigger an international incident severe enough to start another war. And still, the digging continued. Night after night. For months. The men underground worked beneath the fear of discovery. If Soviet forces detected the tunnel during construction, everyone involved could disappear without explanation. No public arrests. No trials. Just silence. Because this was Cold War Berlin. And silence was often more terrifying than violence. Finally, in early 1955, the tunnel reached the Soviet communication lines. CIA technicians carefully tapped into the underground cables. Soon, the recordings began. Thousands of conversations flooded into Western intelligence centers. Military transport discussions. Aircraft movement reports. Supply chain logistics. Soviet command communications across Eastern Europe. For the CIA, it was an intelligence goldmine. Analysts worked around the clock translating Russian transmissions. Massive tape reels filled secure archive rooms. At its peak, the operation intercepted hundreds of thousands of calls. American intelligence believed they had achieved one of the greatest espionage victories in modern history. But hidden deep inside the British intelligence service, someone already knew everything. His name was George Blake, a British intelligence officer working secretly for the Soviet Union. Unknown to the CIA and MI6, Blake had betrayed Operation Gold before construction even began. Every detail of the tunnel's existence had already been passed directly to Moscow. The Soviets knew. The KGB knew. And yet, they allowed the operation to continue. Why? Because exposing the tunnel immediately would reveal the existence of a Soviet mole inside British intelligence. Protecting Blake became more important than stopping the tunnel itself. So for nearly a year, the Soviet Union secretly watched the Americans listening to their communications. It became a bizarre game of controlled deception. Some historians later believed Soviet intelligence intentionally altered certain communications traveling through the tunnel, feeding selected information to the West, manipulating intelligence flow, turning the CIA's greatest triumph into a carefully monitored illusion. And nobody in Washington realized it. Then came April 1956. Without warning, Soviet forces suddenly discovered the tunnel. Official reports described shocked East German workers uncovering the hidden passage after a routine cable inspection. But behind the scenes, the discovery had been orchestrated. Soviet officers escorted journalists into the tunnel. Photographs spread around the world. Western newspapers exploded with headlines about an underground American spy operation beneath East Berlin. The Soviet Union publicly condemned the United States for violating international law. American officials refused to fully comment. Privately, however, the damage was devastating. The operation was over. Years of planning. Millions of dollars. And one of the most ambitious espionage projects in history. Destroyed overnight. Yet inside the CIA, debate quickly emerged. Had the tunnel still been worth it? Some intelligence officials argued the recordings provided enormous strategic insight into Soviet military structure. Others believed the Soviets had manipulated the entire operation from the beginning. Even today, historians still debate how much genuine intelligence the tunnel actually produced. But one fact remained undeniable. The tunnel revealed the true nature of the Cold War. A conflict fought not only with armies and nuclear weapons, but with information. Secrets became ammunition. Telephone cables became battlefields. And cities like Berlin became giant surveillance machines divided by fear. After the tunnel's exposure, parts of the underground structure remained hidden for years. Eventually, sections were preserved as historical artifacts. But much of the operation faded into classified archives. Meanwhile, George Blake continued spying for the Soviet Union. For years, suspicion never reached him. He remained inside British intelligence, secretly passing Western operations to Moscow. Until finally, in 1961, Blake was exposed and arrested. The scale of his betrayal shocked intelligence agencies across the West. Hundreds of operations had been compromised. Agents had been exposed. Networks collapsed. Blake was sentenced to decades in prison. But the story did not end there. In one of the most unbelievable episodes of Cold War espionage, Blake later escaped prison and fled to the Soviet Union. There, he lived for decades under Soviet protection. To Moscow, he was a hero. To Britain, one of the most damaging traitors in modern intelligence history. And buried beneath Berlin, the ghost of Operation Gold remained. The tunnel itself eventually became more than a spy story. It became a symbol. A reminder that during the Cold War, entire nations operated inside a permanent state of paranoia. Governments monitored allies. Friends became informants. Ordinary civilians unknowingly lived above secret intelligence wars unfolding beneath their feet. In East Berlin, surveillance became part of daily life. The East German Stasi later built one of the largest domestic surveillance systems in human history. Millions of files documented private conversations, relationships, and routines. The logic was simple. Control information, and you control society. The CIA tunnel represented that same obsession on a global scale. Not merely gathering intelligence, but listening to an empire breathe through underground wires. Today, Berlin looks very different. The Cold War walls are gone. Tourists walk freely through streets once divided by machine guns and checkpoints. But beneath parts of the city, remnants of forgotten tunnels still exist. Hidden concrete chambers. Sealed corridors. Fragments of a war that officially never became a direct war. And among those buried secrets lies the story of the CIA tunnel beneath East Berlin. A mission built in darkness. Protected by lies. And doomed from the very beginning. Because in the Cold War, sometimes the enemy already knew your secret before you even began. The files were sealed. The tunnel was abandoned. And officially, it became just another forgotten operation buried beneath history.